We're very lucky today. Thanks a lot. Justin Chow from Bad VR has joined us. And yeah, I'm very interested to hear about what's going on at Bad VR and a bit about your journey. So maybe actually my first question should be, what led you up to working at Bad VR, and what's your kind of journey been up until this point?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me, Robin, and the Spatial Ape team and everyone here listening. It's great to be back in Spatial Ape. So I started out, before Bad VR, I was an automotive engineer, actually, at Toyota. I was the guy who was helping develop the hybrid vehicle systems to actually make sure they're safe and operational, and also pleasing to drive for people. So our hybrid team was always on the roads testing, and I was the guy in the helmet, strapped in, going at high speeds around the test track. Different locations around the country. And at the time, I was just looking for more in terms of lifestyle. So I didn't want to stay in Michigan for too long. And so I'm back in California now, where I was from. And I started looking around for opportunities, started doing some things to explore the community. And when COVID hit, I realized that there's a big opportunity for this like immersive technologies to really enable people to work more effectively together. And besides that, I've always had a passion for the environment and trying to figure out how to use tech better for essentially bringing this issue of climate change and just environmental degradation to the world. And so I was thinking a lot about, okay, how do you enable more collaboration? How do you enable this communication interface? How do you enable people to actually see and feel and understand contextually what some of these real life issues are? Because it's really tough sometimes if you're in an urban environment to understand that, right? Like, we don't see that in real life sometimes. It's very invisible to us. So I dove really deep into the XR community. I got really more interested, started attending more events, started to attend events like this one, trying to figure out who's who, what's what. And through my networking, I came across the founder, Jad Miaushi, of our company, Bad VR, and instantly realized that they're doing something that I could do really well and also embrace. I've always really been into data. Bad VR is all about data visualization in different ways. I'm sure most of us in here, if you ever worked with Excel, you understand the pain points of working with massive amounts of data, or even any kind of data processing systems, like using MATLAB, R, Python. Like, there's issues with visualizing this data and understanding how to pull patterns and how to see trends. But that really got me interested. Plus, before I even joined Bad VR, the company had already done some work with the UN and visualizing what would happen with climate change affecting different cities around the world. And so that got me extra interested. So, I said, I'm here to help. I'm pretty good at managing projects and just executing. And they said, yeah, sure, let's do it. And that's what got me to where I am now. And it's now been about half a year, and it's been great. We do a lot of products that I thought I would get into, which I am into now. And it's really helped satisfy some of those desires that I was expressing along that journey I just outlaid.
Cool. So I guess you see VR as a force for social change. That's really interesting. Yes,
definitely. Definitely very potent for that.
So you mentioned that Bad VR, you're attracted to Bad VR because of some of the projects they're working on. Can you share anything about the kinds of things and the kinds of clients that Bad VR works with?
Sure. One of the things that I can definitely share is one that I'm actively working on now is we have been working with NOAA, the National Oceanic Administration, to see, I think I left out an A there. It's just I always forget the last A or the third A, but we're working really hard on visualizing weather. As you can expect, weather is collected in infinite amount of ways from different sensors and different sites. A lot of things you see on the meteorology reports, for instance, they come from radar and the Doppler recordings, and how you actually can see that in a different way. That's what we're really invested in right now. And it's amazing because some of the 2D solutions that are out there, they're pretty clunky, not only in terms of the speed of which things get loaded and unloaded and actually manipulated, but also in terms of the interactions. Sometimes it's just a bump up from your typical like PowerPoint even experience. And so trying to use the immersive experience better to enable the data analysts and the decision makers who want to know, where is this weather formation? Is it going to impact any communities around me relative to the geopolitical lines? Where is it going to hit? Where is it going? These are really important things because the amount of time you save translates to lives saved when it comes down to actually projecting the information to the public or to decision makers who make the call of, okay, let's evacuate or let's not evacuate and hold off until we know there's a certain prediction factor we can be confident about.
That's interesting. So you're talking about the idea of presenting data in a spatial way. I guess in some cases, it makes a lot more sense to present data spatially. What works in terms of what do you find is a good application for data as opposed to like data that just makes things more confusing when you try and view it visually? What kind of works best, do you find?
Oh man, I love this question because I think people will always confuse VR and AR and immersive tools for applying to everything, but in reality, you can't use the same tool for every problem. And so some things are definitely best plotted in 2D. Bar graphs and charts. There's definitely a use case for those when it comes down to simple information. I think what really comes in handy for immersive applications is when you have multi-dimensional data. So the biggest one that everyone can come to mind is maps, right? You have to actually have reference to contextual things like, what's happening in relation to this building, what's happening in relation to this cluster of sensors that's going around us with IoT and the digital age bringing all these different inputs coming in. That's a huge deal because it's really tough to layer on things in 2D. With 3D, you can see everything in multi-dimension with reference to, altitude and different kinds of reference points of depth. If you don't have all that information, it's just something really simple, then I just go with whatever works that's simplest because simple often, especially when I was working in Toyota, like simple often is the best solution.
Yeah, totally. So do you get clients asking for things that you would often have to say, actually, this works better in 2D? And what kind of ideas do clients come to you with?
Yeah, there are definitely cases where you hear like, wow, I could use this for everything. And you say, no, you can't. The specifics are, let's see, I have to find some specifics to give an example of, but I don't know, like we work with companies that are, for instance, in telecommunications. One of the things we're developing also besides the weather is visualizing your signals. So how strong is your Wi-Fi in this part of the room, or how strong is your Wi-Fi if you had a plan for the entire building? Where would you put your router? Where would you put your modem to maximize the effectiveness of that equipment? And sometimes people wonder, okay, like, can you actually use this to like, how far can this technology go? Can this provide the analysis? Can this provide the could you know like all the references, all the data here from this? And right now we're concentrating a lot on the visualization itself and not exactly all the way into the analysis portion. So there's definitely a limitation that we have to express because it's hard enough to actually encapsulate everything into a visual. The analysis portion is something that we're definitely interested in working on down the line, but we're definitely more concerned about the visualization aspect because that's where the magic happens. Sometimes you can export the visualizations even to something that analysis tool that people already, enterprise analysis tools that people are familiar with, those can maybe handle some of the analysis better, especially when it comes down to data crunching, for instance. But when it comes to visualization, that's where we can definitely offer the most support and value.
Okay, that's interesting. And so are you going into companies and saying, we've got this new way of visualizing data and we think that you might have an application for this. We think that we can offer you something. Or are you finding that people are reaching out to you mostly and saying, we're hoping to find somebody to build this tool for us, that kind of thing?
I think we're really strong at our marketing. And so a lot of times when we publish some of our videos and demos, we'll get people coming to us and ask us, what can this do for us? And so we're really into the demoing of our products to potential clients who reach us from this marketing effort. And so that's where I would say the interface happens with the customers that we, match up the best with, because they see what's happening on their screen and they go, okay, this could work for us. And then they come to us usually, I would say.
Okay. And do they come to you with ideas for mostly VR applications, or do you work in AR as well? I can imagine that data would look good overlaid on top of real world objects.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times it's actually educating people what the experience could be like, because not everyone has had access to this technology. And maybe some people in this room also experience that. You kind of have to give them I don't know what you call it, a crash course into immersive tech. Sometimes you give them the headset, they go, that's the first time they've ever probably put it on, and they go, wow, this is incredible. And then you kind of get into the weeds of going over what XR really is first. And then before you even get to the value prop for their specific use case. So there's definitely an educational component, I would say, at this stage of the industry, where people are starting to recognize it's taken off and it's potentially usable, but they don't know even what it is in the first place. So you have to overcome that barrier as you're selling.
Yeah, that makes sense. There are a lot of people that come into our meetup and ask how they get into VR or how they get a job in VR. And I imagine there might be some people watching here today or on the stream that are looking to get into the VR industry. I guess you've had a unconventional route into the industry, so maybe most people wouldn't follow in your footsteps. But if you were to give advice to somebody that would like to get a job either as a developer or as a project manager in the VR industry, what would you say to them?
Oh man, so coincidentally, I'm preparing a talk about how to break into XR.
Oh, perfect.
Through a community that I joined to learn Unity. It's called Universe, and I graduated from 3 courses I took from that. And we've been thinking really hard about how to encourage people to think outside the box of actually breaking in. And I feel really strongly that this is still an industry you can apply the same skills you would do for any, with a little bit more refinement, I would say, towards the technological side of XR development. And so along the way, I applied the same things I would do to actually get any job. Is I networked hard. Even though we went virtual, I did a lot of virtual networking. And I just finished actually analyzing my informational interviews the other day, and I had 45 exclusively informational interviews, and out of those 45 I had 32 that had a really good information about how to get in. And I saw there's a pattern essentially of what the advice that's given. The number one advice falls in either like network more, get your work out there, like publish it and actually show people what you've done. And one of them that stuck out to me was also defining yourself. So making sure that you know what your worth is, you know what your strengths and weaknesses are, because oftentimes this is still a very interpersonal communication you have with a job provider. For instance, they want to know, like, who are you? And if you don't have a good answer for that, you're dead. Like, you're not going to have any coherence to how you sell yourself, and how could they imagine you working for them. But you really have to know, who you are, what you offer, what you bring to the table, who you aren't are also. So those 3 things, I would say, are really essential when you go forth and actually try to get a job in XR. But work for me mostly was really making sure that I was seen. So really make sure you go out, as you talk to people, try to circulate your work and make sure that it's circulated in a clear manner, because people's portfolios, sometimes you want to make sure that it's, you don't want to make it so that it's tough for someone to browse through in fewer than 30 seconds, for instance, because someone who's busy, who's a job hire, doesn't have that much time to look through. And now, as on the other side of the table, when I'm helping out with the hiring process, I can totally attest, you don't have much time to showcase your work. It's tough when you have, dozens and dozens of applicants who are vying for the same position. So you want to make sure that you have a clear and cohesive message to your potential hirer. So definitely, if you want to know more, I'm going to give a more in-depth talk with someone I'm close with, who's also a PM role. We have been talking about how to encourage and provide this advice to people in a very more formalized manner. So we have some slides we're preparing, and you can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to even talk to you on a one-on-one basis if you want some just personalized advice and feedback on how your experience is going. Because I really feel strongly that if you don't reach out, if you don't make yourself known, you're not gonna make it just applying to jobs on those sites. You're just gonna basically, you're clicking into this computer that is filtering for you, where maybe there's a chance if you have a personal reference that'll get you past that initial filter. And people don't really recognize that. They still continue, majority of people still continue to just click and send these applications in these portals, and that's not the way to go. That's a waste of time.
Yeah, that's good advice. And I guess we should mention now that that Bad VR have a few roles currently being advertised. Are they in your team? Can you talk to us a little bit about them?
Yeah, sure. So we're definitely scaling up. We're really excited. We have a role for a project manager, someone like me, trying to execute, keep things on track. We have a role for immersive designing, making sure that we really incorporate the user experience and user interaction, user interface design well. We have a role for data engineering. There's definitely a lot of back-end work that has to be done. We also have a role for a developer, and we also have a role for an operations admin, so someone to support some of our executive management level activities. So there's a whole array of things we're scaling up on, and if you think that you align with any of them, feel free to reach out to me and talk to me, and maybe there's a fit. It's always good, whether it works out or not, to reach out and just get to know each other in community, because it's just a small community, and you just bump into each other so often during events. And I think we have to work together to make it better.
Oh yeah, totally agree. And if you're in VR now, you can click on the email me button here, and it will send you information about Bad VR and an email address that you can contact Justin and his colleagues on. So my final question before we open it up to the audience here is, what is it that you're most excited about for the future of XR? Either it doesn't have to be within Bad VR, it might just be in the industry as a whole, but what is it you think is most exciting about the future?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a big fan of making it easy for people to access, and I really hope that we can get hands tracking, really, really good, so that we don't have to always rely on controllers. And also, I'm really a big fan of making sure that we don't have to rely on something clunky in your face. If we can get to the point where it's just as natural as glasses, I'd be really happy, and I think everyone would just be on board to try it out. Some people look at the headset and go, that's not for me, and that's a big turnoff. But in reality, once you get into the experience, just getting them to the experience, that'll help sell your technology. And it's just so hard right now sometimes with these headsets being relatively heavy. You can only stand the experience for a certain amount of time before you take them off. You can get dizzy. There's a certain amount of hardware issues that we have to get past before we can move forward. So that's what I'm really looking forward to, seeing these interfaces being a little more accessible.
Yeah, good answer. And yeah, I'd just like to thank Justin for coming in on behalf of everyone. We can't do claps like we can in Altspace, but I guess we can wave our hands or put them up. There we go. Thanks so much for giving us your time, and hopefully we'll see you again in here soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions for Justin?
Yeah, I'll shoot. So, I think the really fascinating thing with data visualization, spatial data visualization, is how do you present information in a novel way in 3D that you can get way more information out of than you ever could in a single 2D interface. Are you doing any sort of studies or anything of the sort to actually try to see if we show someone this one object versus showing them the tabulated data this way, they can gain the information significantly faster, or vice versa.
You're referring to like an A/B study in a way?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've toyed around with some of that, the idea, and we've also done a lot of like customer research and exploration and interviews, like showing off some of the things. What do you think? Can you like imagine yourself with this experience, even if we can't give you the headset right now, just on a video chat or something? And how do you think this would work with your application, your uses, to understand that answer for sure. I don't know if that answered your question. Sorry, something you mentioned at the beginning about spatial data.
Yeah, I guess I kind of just I think it's still not there isn't like a go-to list of like these are the things that would always be better to present in 3D in VR.
I see, like a best practices
Yeah.
kind of information. That'd be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think I've
that research-
seen that either.
No. So I think there's definitely a lot to still learn in this space, and so I'm curious to see if you guys kind of maybe have like a secret list of just like these are the things that we definitely would always want to show in 3D if we can.
Yeah. That's a good point. I will give a shout out to some of these institutions that have been out there, like for instance, Ultra Leap, Magic Leap. Some of these companies, they do have these best practices, especially for user interfaces, that have been really handy. And I think, owe them a ton for a lot of respect for publishing that, because it really helps the community understand what you should develop in order to make it more accessible.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
I would be interested to know, you talked about weather data or data from weather simulations or something. How do you, I've worked a lot in broadcast, and we also had very special, very big systems that just try to visualize weather on a card, for example, on a map or whatever, for the audience. How do you present or visualize weather data? Right.
So the weather data, we try to make it as non-2D as possible. So literally you can see it in a volumetric kind of mode. I can say that much right now as we develop it more. It is definitely something that you could touch, you could actually interact with. Sometimes people have to pull insights from these complex formations, and it's hard to see unless you have cross sections, for instance. And that's one thing that we've also thought about. How do you actually peer into it? Can you poke your head into it? Could you actually extract? Can you expand it? Mm-hmm. Maybe some of you have used some design tools like Gravity Sketch or Tilt Brush, where you can actually, like scale and translate and rotate. That's what we're talking about, like getting really into the nitty gritty of actually how do you interact and manipulate the weather. Mm-hmm. And so if you can imagine that, and just imagine like your tornado or something,
Mm-hmm.
Could you visualize that in that way? And that's what we're shooting for.
Okay. So because let's take the tornado, it's a lot of data that you probably get from how the wind is working and how much forces are applied. So you have probably tons of layers of data, and then to get through that must be a big challenge, basically.
Definitely. Yeah, we're so there's only, I wouldn't say only, there's definitely a few sources in the world that are really prominent in terms of feeding that data, since we can't collect it ourselves. And so, for instance, there's I forgot the one in Europe, but at least in the United States, there are the NextRad data set. You can, for instance, get from NOAA, that's hosted on the Amazon Web Service. There's also a bunch that are on the world you can access for free. And these are all open source, not open source, but open to the public to extract, because weather is still a public good. And so the challenge is how to actually get all that complicated information into your experience. And so that's definitely one of the reasons why the data science is so important to have on board, so that we can actually, interface with those servers very well, or else you might have delays, and it could be another clunky experience for the user, which would be horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
When was Bad VR first created, and how big is the team now?
Who's asking?
Sorry, this is Jesse over here.
Oh, hey, Jesse.
Hey.
So it was in the 2018, end of
Yeah.
2017, 2018, early 2018, when it was about, I think it was like, it was definitely created in a hackathon environment. The story, if you want to know more, go on the website or search for the founder, and you'll see some great articles. We have a lot of, by the way, we have a lot of great media we put out, and interviews with our personnel. So you can definitely see the personalities of our team. Currently, we're about a dozen and change, and it's definitely an exciting time because you can get so intimate with your colleagues and have like really good one-on-one discussions. And that's one of the things I really enjoy most about working in the startup environment.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are you guys fully remote now?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. And it's working out really well. You know, like this technology doesn't really require too much in person. It's always beneficial for, let's say, like brainstorming meetings and whatnot. But as we get more into these enterprise office tools, that's going to help us do that, I would say.
Yeah, I can imagine like big data companies and companies that are hoping to visualize the data in new and interesting ways would be looking for these kinds of experiences to get people on a headset and get clients in a space where they can show them something maybe they've never, or data that they've never seen before, or data in a way that they've never seen before.
Yeah, exactly. And we often compare our experiences to something that people can relate, like the movies, like Iron Man, you know, like Marvel kind of stuff. There's all those interfaces you see. Those are coming to us. They're real. Like we're building those. And the real power of doing this is to unlock the amount of data that's just inordinate these days with the big data revolution. And I think it was like 73% or something that I was listening to Microsoft's VP of the Azure system. You know, that's how much is untapped still across the world. And it's enormous. Like if you can't tap that amount, like what is holding you back from really having more business intelligence? And also data science itself, it's normally very exclusive. So one of the things that we try to, you know, tell people is that we're doing this also to democratize data. Like you don't have to have an advanced degree. Like you don't have to have a master's and PhD, which is often the case when you have data scientists. It's also very gender biased. The majority of data scientists are male. You know, there's definitely a demographics component of this that you can unlock. So all these things that are really important in terms of accessibility aren't just in terms of the physical accessibility, but also the mental and intellectual accessibility too. That, you know, these technologies, which you visualize things differently, you can unlock.
I'm curious. You said you've done a lot of demos at this point, right? And I feel like, you know, being in the sort of VR community, it can be pretty easy to lose track of what is natural and what is not.
What do you mean by that?
But, in terms of, I've been wearing a VR headset for a while now, and so for me, if you put an object in front of me on a table, and a thing says pick it up, I'm like, well, that's the easiest thing you could possibly do. You press the little grip button like you would in real life, and you pick it up. But a lot of people, you know, they're not even holding the controller in the way that it's designed to be held. Like they're holding, you know, the very bottom of the Quest controller, and so they don't have the right place, right?
Yeah.
So, having shown VR and tried to show your work to a bunch of people who it may be totally new to, do you feel like there is a sort of design hurdle that is the most important thing that we still need to overcome to make it so that someone really can just put on a VR headset for the first time and understand how it works? Yeah.
I think I see where you're going. Yes, trying to lower the barrier of the user interface is huge, so that it's very intuitive, super natural. So you know immediately, like once you have it, you know where to put your hands, you know where to go. That's definitely a big thing we think about a lot. And so one of the struggles, for instance, is how do you onboard for an experience? You provide just a full-blown tutorial. How long is that tutorial? How many steps is it? So, you know, we try to minimize that if we need one. because it's a turnoff if you have to go through like a gazillion steps just to understand how to use the tool, versus having like 3. You know, that's a great number. It's psychologically, the power of 3 is big for humans. A triangle is very strong in all manners, not structurally, but also in terms of mentally too. People understand that very well. And also that's why I was talking about hands tracking, because if you don't need to use the controller, then it just becomes instantaneously more natural. So that's definitely the way to go, and really happy to see some of this hardware upgrading to accommodate that. Now, I'm not really sure, eye tracking has not been fully explored, but I'm sure also that'll help with intuition too. Well, Robin, I'm gonna head off then if there's no more questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for your time. It was really interesting to talk to you.
Yeah, if there's anything you guys want to ask, just find me on LinkedIn. Be sure to personalize our message too. I don't usually respond to people who don't have something to, add the note, because I don't know who you are sometimes. Make sure you say that you were here or something like that so I can know. I have people who are at random around the world. I don't really know why I know them or who I know them or where I know them from, so it's difficult sometimes. Yeah, so definitely add a note. And, if anyone's listening, I have an article on LinkedIn about how to get into XR. I also have an article I wrote about how to network effectively virtually to get the job. And then, as I said, we're going to have a very official professional event of how to break into XR with actual data and more storytelling from personal experiences for myself and a buddy. So, yeah, just happy to connect and wish everyone best of luck with whatever you're doing right now. And hopefully see you again soon.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks,
Justin.
Thank you so much
Bye,
for
everyone.
coming in.
Nice to meet you. See ya.
In touch.